Years passed in a way that felt both fast and slow. Looking back, she sometimes wondered how she ever lived the way she once did. Counting coins at night and worrying about doors closing before she could reach them. Life was still work, still effort, but it no longer felt like a fight she faced alone. She now worked full-time at the clinic. The building had become familiar, almost comforting. She knew which hallway lights flickered, which chairs wobbled, which patients preferred silence, and which needed gentle conversation. Her hands moved with confidence now, guided by habit and care. New trainees came and went. Some stayed. Some decided it wasn't for them. She made time for those who struggled, remembering how lost she once felt on her first day. "Take it one step at a time," she often said. "That's enough." At the diner, she still stopped by on quiet evenings. Not to work, but to sit at the counter with a cup of coffee. The cook teased her about becoming too important for the place. "I started here," she replied. "I won't forget that." One autumn afternoon, the foundation invited her again, this time for something different. They planned to open a small support center in town. Nothing large, just a place where people could ask questions, get guidance, and feel less alone. They asked her to help shape it. She walked through the empty space before it opened. The walls were bare. The rooms echoed. She imagined chairs filled with nervous people, much like she once was. She helped choose simple furniture, warm lighting, clear signs. No feeling of pressure. When the center opened, there was no big announcement. Word spread quietly. People came. A single parent looking for training options. An older worker afraid of being replaced. A young person unsure where to start. She listened. Sometimes she gave advice. Sometimes she simply sat with them until the fear softened. One evening, as she locked up, rain began to fall. Light at first, then steady. She stood under the awning and watched it. The memory returned, clear and sharp. The storm, the soaked coat, the hesitation at the door. She smiled softly. At home, she kept a small journal now. Nothing fancy, just thoughts she didn't want to lose. That night, she wrote about how strange it felt to become someone others leaned on. She wrote about responsibility. She wrote about gratitude. Months later, a letter arrived from the Foundation's legal office. It was brief and respectful. The old man had passed quietly. No details, no ceremony mentioned. She sat at the table for a long time after reading it. There was sadness, of course, but also peace. She attended a small gathering held in his memory. No speeches, no spotlight. Just people whose lives had been touched in quiet ways. She realized then how many there were. Afterward, the lights reflected on the wet pavement. She stopped in front of the diner. It was closed for the night. She pressed her hand against the glass for a moment. Inside, everything was still. She thought about the girl she once was, tired, worried, trying to be invisible. She wished she could tell her something, that kindness matters, that it counts, that it comes back. Not always in money or opportunity, but in strength. Years later, people would tell her their own stories. About small choices. About moments that changed everything. She always listened, because she knew how easily a life could turn on a single night. On a night of rain, on a simple decision to open a door, and she carried that truth with her, steady and quiet. Wherever life led next, the support center slowly became part of the town's quiet routine. It didn't have a bright sign or busy halls, but the door opened every day, and that mattered. She arrived early most mornings, unlocked the door, and turned on the lights one by one. The rooms filled with a soft glow that made people feel welcome without saying a word. She kept a small notebook at the front desk. Not for records, just reminders. Notes about programs, phone numbers, and sometimes small thoughts she didn't want to forget. On the first page, she had written a single line. Listen first. People arrived with different worries. Some spoke quickly, afraid of losing courage if they stopped. Others sat in silence until words came slowly. She never rushed them. She remembered how it felt to stand on the edge of asking for help. One morning, a man around her age came in, clothes damp from light rain. He stood near the door, uncertain. "You can sit," she said gently. He did, gripping his hands together. He talked about losing work, about feeling ashamed, about not knowing how to explain it to his family. She listened, nodding, letting pauses breathe. By the time he left, his problems were not solved, but his shoulders were lower. That felt like something. After work, she often walked through town instead of taking the bus. She liked seeing the streets change with the seasons. Leaves gathered near curbs. Shop windows shifted displays. Life moved, quietly but surely. Sometimes, she stopped at the diner. One evening, she noticed a new waitress behind the counter. Young, nervous, moving too fast. The way people do when they're afraid of making mistakes. She sat at the counter and ordered coffee. When the waitress spilled a little while pouring, her face flushed red. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "It's okay," she replied. "Happens to everyone." The girl smiled with relief. As she drank her coffee, she watched the room. The bell rang. Plates clinked. A familiar rhythm. She realized then that places carry stories. Walls remember things even when people don't. At home, her journal filled slowly. She wrote about moments that felt small but stayed with her. A thank you note left on the desk. A smile from someone who came back a second time. One entry stood out. She wrote about the old man, not as someone who saved her, but as someone who trusted her kindness enough to act on it. That trust mattered. Late one night, during a heavy rain, the power went out in her apartment. She lit a candle and sat by the window, listening to the water hit the ground. She felt no fear. The storm reminded her of how far she had come. The next day, she received a call from the clinic. They offered her a chance to take on a mentoring role. It wasn't a promotion exactly, but it meant guiding new workers through their first months. She accepted. Teaching others forced her to slow down, to explain not just how to do things, but why they mattered. She found herself repeating lessons she had learned the hard way. Be patient. Pay attention, people. Remember how you make them feel. One afternoon, a trainee asked her why she cared so much. She thought about it before answering. "Because someone once did the same for me," she said. That was enough. As the year turned, the support center hosted a small open day. No speeches. Just coffee, chairs, and open doors. People wandered in and out. Some stayed longer. She watched conversations form and dissolve. She watched fear turn into plans. She felt proud, but quietly. Near the end of the day, an older woman approached her. The woman's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "I don't know if this is the right place," the woman said. She smiled. "If you walked in, it probably is." They sat together for nearly an hour. That night, as she locked the center, she paused on the steps. The air smelled like rain. The sky was dark but calm. She understood something clearly then. Her life had not changed because of money alone. It had changed because someone treated her struggle as real, and now she did the same for others. She walked home slowly, hands in her pockets. Feeling steady, storms still came, but they no longer decided her path. She did. The rain had been falling since late afternoon. It's a kind of heavy rain that didn't seem to come straight down, but sideways, pushed by angry wind. Water ran along the streets like small rivers, climbing over sidewalks and soaking anyone unlucky enough to be outside. Most shops had closed early, and the town felt quiet in a strange, uneasy way. Inside a small roadside diner, the lights glowed warm and yellow against the storm. The place wasn't fancy. The paint on the walls had faded, the booths were cracked from years of use. The bell above the door had a tired sound when it rang. Still, it was one of the few places open late, even on nights like this. Behind the counter stood a young waitress, wiping down the same spot again and again. Her shoes were worn thin, and her uniform had been washed so many times that it no longer held its original color. Her shoulders ached from working since early morning. Her eyes burned with tiredness she could not afford to admit. Tonight had been slow. The storm kept people at home, and tips were almost non-existent. Every empty booth felt heavy. She kept glancing at the clock above the kitchen window, counting the minutes until closing time, though she knew she couldn't leave early. She needed every hour, every dollar. As thunder rolled in the distance, she thought about the envelope waiting at home. The rent notice sat inside it, folded and unfolded so many times the paper felt soft. She was already behind. Again, she had done the math over and over, but the numbers never worked in her favor. The door rattled suddenly, pushed by a strong gust of wind. She looked up, expecting nothing more than the storm fighting its way inside. Then she saw him. An old man stood just outside the door, barely visible through the glass clouded with rain. He was thin, his coat hanging loosely from his shoulders. His hair was white and wet, stuck flat against his head. One hand held the doorframe as if he needed it to stay standing. He didn't step in. He just stood there, unsure. She watched him for a moment. Customers were supposed to come in or leave. Standing around usually meant trouble. That was what the manager always said. No loitering. No exceptions. But something about the way the man stood there made her pause. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't trying to get attention. He looked lost, like someone who had walked too far and didn't know where to go next. The bell above the door jingled. Softly as she opened it partway, cold air rushed in, carrying rain with it. "Sir," she said gently, raising her voice just enough to be heard over the storm. "Are you coming in?" The old man looked up, startled, as if he hadn't realized anyone had noticed him. His eyes were pale and tired, but kind. "I don't want to bother anyone," he said. His voice was low and careful. "I just needed a moment to catch my breath." She glanced around the diner. Empty booths. An empty counter. No manager in sight. Just the cook in the back, busy with dishes. "You can come in," she said. "It's dry in here." He hesitated, then slowly stepped inside. Water dripped from his coat onto the floor. He tried to shake it off, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to make a mess." "It's fine," she replied, grabbing a towel from behind the counter and handing it to him. "Storm like this gets everyone." He thanked her and carefully wiped his hands, then his face. She noticed his fingers shook slightly. Whether from cold or age, she couldn't tell. "Please," she said, pointing to a booth near the window. "You can sit there," he sat slowly, as if his body argued with every movement. She brought him a glass of water without asking, setting it gently on the table. "Can I get you something warm?" she asked. "Coffee, soup." He looked at the menu but didn't touch it. "I don't have much," he said honestly. "If that's all right." She knew that look. She had seen it too many times in the mirror. The look of someone already apologizing for existing. "That's okay," she said quickly. "We have soup that's already made. It'll help with the cold." Before he could protest, she headed toward the kitchen. She poured a bowl of soup, added extra bread on the side, and brought it back to him when she placed it in front of him. His eyes widened. "I didn't order all this," he said. "I know," she replied. "But you need it." He stared at the bowl, as if it were something precious. Slowly he picked up the spoon. Steam rose into the air as he took his first bite. His shoulders relaxed almost immediately. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do this." She smiled, though her feet hurt and her head felt heavy. "Sometimes," she said, "people just need something warm." The storm outside grew louder, rain beating against the windows like impatient fingers. The diner felt like a small island in the middle of chaos as he ate. She returned to wiping the counter, but her eyes kept drifting back to him. He ate slowly, carefully, as if savoring each bite. Not like someone greedy, but like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in a while. When he finished, he pushed the bowl aside and folded his hands. "I haven't been treated kindly in a long time," he said. "People usually look past me." She leaned against the booth across from him, only for a moment. The diner was empty. No one would notice. "People get busy," she said. "They forget to look." "Ah," He nodded. You didn't forget? Thunder cracked loudly, making the windows shake. The lights flickered, then steadied. She felt a sudden worry. If the power went out, the diner would close immediately. He would be back out in the storm. You can stay until it slows down, she said. No rush. He looked surprised. Are you sure? Yes, she said. It's not safe out there. Time passed slowly. The rain didn't let up. She refilled his coffee once, then again, without saying anything about payment. He never asked for more, but he never refused either. During a quiet moment, looked at her more closely. You work very hard, he said. She laughed softly. It's just work, he replied. It's more than that. I can tell, she shrugged, uncomfortable with the tension. Everyone works hard. Not everyone chooses kindness when they're tired, said. She didn't know what to say to that, so she stood and went back to the counter. The clock ticked on. Closing time came and went, but she didn't lock the door. Finally, the rain softened, turning into a steady drizzle. The old man stood, carefully putting his coat back on. I should go, he said. I've already taken too much of your time. She shook her head. It's fine. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few coins. Placing them on the table, It's not enough, he said, his voice filled with regret. She gently pushed the coins back toward him. Keep it, she said. You might need it more than I do. He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to understand her. I won't forget this, he said. She smiled again, tired but sincere. You don't have to. He nodded once, then walked toward the door. Before stepping outside, he turned back. What is your name? He asked. She hesitated, then gave it. He repeated it softly, as if committing it to memory. The bell rang as he left. The storm swallowed him almost immediately. She locked the door and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. Her feet hurt. Her wallet was still thin. The problems waiting at home hadn't disappeared, but for the first time that night, her heart felt lighter. She turned off the lights. Not knowing that the kindness she had shown during a stormy night was about to change her life in ways she could never imagine. Morning came quietly. As if the storm from the night before had never happened, the sky was pale and clean, washed clear by the rain. Puddles sat along the roads, reflecting the early light. For most people in town, it was just another day. For the young waitress, it felt heavier. She woke up before her alarm, staring at the ceiling of her small room. The sound of rain still seemed to echo in her mind. She thought about the old man, the way he had held the warm bowl with both hands, the way his voice had softened when he spoke. She wondered if he had found a safe place to sleep. She pushed the thought away and sat up. Worry had a way of stealing time, and she couldn't afford that. She washed her face in cold water, tied her hair back, and put on the same uniform she wore almost every day. It smelled faintly of coffee and soap. On the small table near the door sat the envelope she had tried not to look at the night before. The rent notice. She picked it up, read it again, and felt the familiar, tight feeling in her chest. The deadline was close. Too close. She slipped the envelope into a drawer and locked it, as if that could delay the problem. Then she grabbed her bag and stepped outside. The streets were calmer now. People walked their dogs. Cars passed without hurry. No one looked like they had battled the storm. At the diner, the bell rang as she pushed the door open. The smell of fresh coffee greeted her. The cook was already there, humming softly as he worked. Morning, he said. Morning. She replied, tying her apron. She expected the day to be like all the others. Orders, smiles, long hours. She didn't expect anything different. An hour passed, then another. A few regular customers came in. Tips were small, but steady. She kept moving, not letting herself slow down. Then the manager appeared from the back office, holding a brown envelope. Hey, he said. This was left for you. She frowned. For me? He nodded. Someone dropped it off earlier this morning. Didn't say much. Just told me to make sure you got it. Her heart skipped. Who was it? Old fellow, he said. Quiet, polite, didn't even wait for a receipt. Her hands felt suddenly warm as she took the envelope. It wasn't thick. It wasn't fancy. Just plain brown paper with her name written on it in neat handwriting. She waited until the manager walked away before opening it. Inside was a folded letter and a smaller white envelope. She opened the letter first. The words were simple, written carefully, as if the writer wanted to be sure every line was clear. He thanked her for the soup, for the warmth, and for treating him like a person instead of a problem. He wrote that kindness like that stayed with someone longer than food ever could. Her eyes stung as she read at the end of the letter. He wrote that she should open the second envelope when she had time, and that he hoped she would forgive him for being bold. Her hands shook as she reached for the smaller envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper at first. She didn't understand what she was looking at. Numbers, addresses, a stamp. Then it hit her. It was a receipt. Her name was printed at the top. So was her address. Below that was a statement showing that her overdue rent had been paid. All of it. For a moment, the diner seemed to disappear around her. The sounds faded. The smell of coffee vanished. All she could see were the words on the page. She checked it again. Sure, she had misunderstood. But it was clear. The balance was 0. Her breath caught. This can't be right, she whispered. She rushed to the back office and knocked on the door. Can you look at this? She asked the manager, holding out the paper. He adjusted his glasses and read it slowly. Well, he said finally, looks like someone took care of your problem. Her knees felt weak. She leaned against the wall. But why? She asked. He shrugged. Guess you made an impression. She thought of the old man's words. I won't forget this. She stepped outside for a moment, letting the cool air hit her face. Her eyes filled, and this time she didn't stop the tears. They weren't loud or dramatic. They just came quiet and steady. For the first time in months, the pressure on her chest eased. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Customers noticed her smile. Some even commented on it. You look lighter today, one regular said. She only nodded that evening. As she was about to close, the diner owner arrived unexpectedly. He rarely came by in person. Mind if I speak with you? He asked. She wiped her hands on her apron and nodded. Nervously, he led her to a booth near the window and sat across from her. I heard about what you did last night, he said. Her stomach dropped. I'm sorry if I broke a rule. He raised a hand. That's not why I'm here. He leaned forward. The man you helped has been coming to this diner for years. Not often, but enough. He's known in town. Keeps to himself. She listened quietly. He asked me something this morning, the owner continued. He asked what kind of person you were. Her face warmed. I told him what I see, he said. Someone who shows up. Someone who works hard. Someone who treats people with respect. She swallowed. He didn't say much after that, the owner said. Just nodded.
Ow!
The cook peeked out from the kitchen, curious, but said nothing. The owner stood. Some people carry more weight than they let on, he said. Looks like you reminded him of something important. After he left, she sat alone for a long time. On her walk home, the town looked different. Not brighter. Not richer. Just softer. She unlocked her door and sat at the small table, the letter laid out in front of her. She read it again, slowly. She wondered how many times the old man had walked past people who never looked up, how many times he had been cold and unseen. That night, she slept without setting an alarm. Without worrying about the envelope in the drawer, somewhere across town, the old man sat alone, writing another letter, and neither of them knew that this was only the beginning. The next few days moved slowly. But something inside her had changed. She still woke early, still wore the same uniform, still counted her tips at the end of each shift. But the tight fear that had lived in her chest for so long no longer sat there every second. It came and went now, quieter, like a distant sound, instead of a constant noise, at the diner. People noticed. You seem calmer, the cook said one afternoon, as he slid plates onto the counter. She smiled. "I think I slept better," he nodded, as if that explained everything. She kept thinking about the old man, about how easily he had walked into her life and then out again, leaving behind something she'd never expected. She wondered what kind of life he had lived before that stormy night. She wondered if he was lonely. She wondered if he had someone waiting for him somewhere. Each time the doorbell rang, a small part of her looked up, half expecting to see him again. He didn't come. Midweek, the mail arrived with a stack of envelopes pushed through the slot in her door. Most were ordinary. A bill for electricity. A store flyer. Then she saw one envelope that didn't belong. It was cream-colored, heavier than the others, their name written in the same neat handwriting. Her heart began to race. She didn't open it right away. She set it on the table and made herself a cup of tea she barely tasted. Finally, she sat down and broke the seal. Inside was another letter. This one was longer, the old man wrote, about things he hadn't shared before, about growing up poor, about working his whole life saving every bit he could, about losing people along the way and learning that money could solve many problems, but not the quiet ones. He wrote that her kindness had reminded him of a promise he once made to himself, to never walk past someone who needed help, no matter how tired or busy he was. Then the letter shifted. He wrote that he had looked into her situation, carefully and respectfully. He said he hoped she wouldn't feel embarrassed. He explained that the rent payment was only a start. Her hands tightened on the paper. He had arranged something else. At the bottom of the letter was an invitation. He asked her to meet him the following afternoon at a small office building on the edge of town. He promised there was no pressure and no obligation. She sat back, stunned. Her first reaction was fear. She didn't like owing anyone anything. Her second was doubt. What if this was a mistake? What if she misunderstood his intentions? She folded the letter and stared at it for a long time. The next day at work, she couldn't focus. She mixed up orders. She forgot refills. Customers noticed. "You okay?" One asked gently. "Just tired," she said. By the end of her shift, she had made a decision. She would go. The office building was small and quiet. Nothing like the large glass towers she imagined when she thought of success. The paint was clean but plain. The door opened with a soft click inside. A receptionist greeted her politely and asked her to wait. She sat on a chair with her hands folded in her lap, her heart pounding. After a few minutes, the old man appeared. He looked different in daylight. Cleaner, straighter. His coat was pressed. His shoes were polished, but his eyes were the same. "I'm glad you came," he said. "So am I," she replied. Though her voice shook, he led her into a small office and offered her a seat. "I want to be very clear," said, sitting across from her. "You don't owe me anything. Not your time. Not your gratitude." She nodded. "I helped because I wanted to," he continued. "Not because I expect something back." That eased something inside her. He told her about the foundation he managed quietly, about how he used it to help people who reminded him of paths he once walked. "You reminded me of someone I used to be," said. She listened, unsure what to say. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were papers she didn't understand at first. Forms, letters, a brochure. It was a training program, a local medical support course, designed for people who wanted to enter healthcare but couldn't afford school right away. Tuition covered. Flexible hours. Her breath caught. "I can't," she started. "You can," he said gently. "If you want to?" Tears filled her eyes. "I never thought I could," she whispered. He smiled. "Neither did I once." She left the building with the folder pressed against her chest. That night, she sat at her table, surrounded by papers, reading everything twice. Then 3 times. For the first time, her future felt like something more than survival. Across town, the old man closed his office door and sat quietly. Feeling lighter than he had in years, kindness had come back to both of them, in different ways. And the town kept moving, unaware that 2 lives were slowly changing. Connected by a single night of rain, the weeks that followed were some of the hardest she had ever known, but also the most hopeful. Nothing about her life suddenly became easy. She still worked long shifts at the diner. She still counted coins before buying groceries. But now, there was a quiet sense of direction where fear used to be. She enrolled in the training program the old man had shown her. The building was modest, like the diner, but clean and calm. On her first day, she sat in a small classroom with others who looked just as nervous as she felt. Some were older, some younger, all carrying stories they didn't share. The instructor spoke plainly and moved slowly, making sure no one was left behind. She took notes carefully, her handwriting neat, her focus sharp. Learning felt strange at first, like using a muscle she hadn't touched in years. But once she started, something inside her woke up at night. After closing the diner, she studied at her table. The light was dim, but her mind felt bright. She read until her eyes grew heavy, then read a little more. When doubt crept in, she thought of the storm and the bowl of soup, and she kept going. She didn't tell many people about the program. It felt private, almost fragile. But the cook noticed her books one evening. "School?" he asked, surprised. She nodded. "Trying something new," smiled. "Good for you." Some days were overwhelming. She spilled coffee on herself. She forgot answers she knew. She worried she wasn't smart enough, fast enough, strong enough. On those days, she walked home slowly, letting the air cool her thoughts. One afternoon, she received another letter. This one didn't contain instructions or papers, just a short message. The old man wrote that he hoped she was doing well. He said he didn't need updates or thanks. He only wanted her to know that he believed in her. She held the letter for a long time. She wrote back, careful with her words. She thanked him, not for the money or the opportunity, but for seeing her. For listening. She didn't expect a reply. At the diner, business picked up as the weather improved. Travelers returned. The noise came back. She moved faster now, her steps lighter. One evening, a woman came in with a small child, soaked from unexpected rain. The child shivered, clinging to her side. Without thinking, the waitress brought over a towel and a cup of warm water. "Thank you," the woman said, relieved. She smiled, recognizing the moment. Training grew more demanding. They practiced real tasks, real pressure. She made mistakes and learned from them. Each small success felt huge. Then came a day she hadn't prepared for. The manager called her into the office. "We need to talk about your schedule," he said. Her heart sank. She explained the classes, the hours, the effort to balance both. He listened, quiet. Finally, he nodded. "We'll adjust." She stared at him. "You will." "Good workers are hard to find," he said, "and I don't want to be the reason someone gives up." She thanked him more than once. As summer approached, the training program announced a placement opportunity. A local clinic needed help, part-time, paid. She read the notice again and again. The interview was simple. Honest questions, honest answers. When they called her back, she had to sit down. She got the position. That night, she walked through town under clear skies. The air warm, her steps unsteady with joy. She thought of the old man and wondered if he knew how far his kindness had traveled. Days later, she saw him again. He was sitting at the counter of the diner, a cup of coffee in front of him. For a moment, she froze. Then she walked over. He looked up and smiled, as if he had known she would be there. "You look busy," he said. "I am," she replied. "In a good way," he nodded, pleased. They spoke only briefly. About the weather, about the town. As he stood to leave, he paused. "You're doing the work," he said quietly. "I only opened a door." She watched him walk out. Knowing he was right, the storm that had brought them together felt like a distant memory now, but the kindness from that night was still moving forward, shaping moments, changing paths. And she understood something she hadn't before. Real change. It didn't arrive all at once. It came step by step, and she was finally walking toward it life. didn't suddenly slow down after that. If anything, it moved faster. Her days were now split between the diner, the clinic, and studying. Some mornings she woke before sunrise, her body tired before the day even began. But there was a difference now. The tiredness came with purpose. At the clinic, she learned quickly. She listened more than she spoke. She watched how small actions mattered. A calm voice, a steady hand, a moment of patience. She saw fear in people's eyes and recognized it, because she had lived with it herself. When someone thanked her, she felt it deeply, but she never let it show too much. She was still learning who she was becoming at the diner. She worked fewer hours now, but every shift felt familiar and grounding. The smell of coffee, the sound of plates, the bell above the door, it reminded her where she started. One evening, after closing, she sat alone in a booth, finishing homework under the soft yellow lights. The cook waved goodbye and left her the quiet. She thought about the storm again, how close she had come to turning the old man away. How easy it would have been to follow the rules and look the other way. That thought stayed with her. Weeks passed, then months. The training program ended with a small gathering. No speeches, no fancy words, just quiet pride. When she received her certificate, she held it with both hands, afraid it might disappear if she didn't. That night, she walked home slowly, letting the moment sink in. She stopped at the small park near her apartment and sat on a bench. She realized something then. She was no longer just surviving. She was building. A few days later, another letter arrived. She recognized the handwriting right. Away, the old man wrote that he was stepping back from many things. He said he had lived a full life and wanted to spend his remaining time quietly. He thanked her again, not for the soup, but for reminding him that his life still had meaning beyond comfort. At the end of the letter, he wrote that the foundation would continue its work, helping others like her. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small box she kept under her bed. Inside were reminders of hard days and quiet victories. She never saw him again, but she felt his presence in small ways. In the way doors opened, in the way people helped when asked, in the way kindness moved forward, unseen. At the clinic, she was offered more hours. Then, a longer contract? She accepted. Her mother's health improved. Slowly, but enough to bring hope back into their home. They shared meals without rushing, laughed more. One rainy afternoon, not unlike the night it all began, a young man stood just outside the diner door, soaked and unsure. She saw him through the glass. She didn't hesitate. She opened the door and waved him in. "Come inside," she said. "You'll catch cold out there," as he sat and warmed his hands. She felt a quiet smile form. She understood now. Kindness wasn't about being rich or powerful. It was about noticing years later. People would ask her how her life changed. They expected a big moment. A clear turning point, she always thought. Of the storm, of a bowl of soup, of an old man who needed a place to sit, and of a choice made on a tired night. That was where everything began. Time has a quiet way of moving forward. It doesn't ask permission, and it doesn't wait for anyone to feel ready. It simply goes on. For her life settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. She no longer worked full shifts at the diner, but she still came by on weekends when they needed extra help. The place felt like an old friend. The booths were the same. The counter still had small scratches from years of use. Every time the bell above the door rang, a memory stirred at the clinic. Her responsibilities grew. She was trusted with more tasks now. People recognized her face and asked for her by habit. Some came in nervous, some angry, some tired of being sick. She treated each one the same, with steady care and quiet respect. She learned that healing wasn't always about medicine. Sometimes it was about listening. Sometimes it was about not rushing someone who needed time to speak. One afternoon, an older woman sat across from her, hands folded tight in her lap. "I don't like hospitals," the woman said softly. "I know," she replied. "A lot of people don't." The woman relaxed just a little. Moments like that reminded her why she kept going. Even on the hardest days, Money was still something she watched carefully, but it no longer ruled every thought. Bills were paid on time. The envelope that once brought fear no longer arrived. One evening, as she cleaned her small apartment, she found the old uniform tucked away in a drawer. She held it for a moment, then folded it neatly and placed it back. It had carried her through a hard chapter. She didn't forget that. The town itself seemed to change with the seasons. New shops opened. Old ones closed. People came and went. One day, she received an unexpected call. The foundation. They asked if she would be willing to speak at a small gathering. Not a speech, they said. Just a conversation. They wanted people to hear what support could do when it reached the right moment. Her first instinct was to say, no. She wasn't comfortable in front of groups. She wasn't anyone special, but after sitting with the idea for a night, she agreed. The room was simple. Folding chairs, a small table with water, nothing intimidating. She spoke honestly. About working nights, about feeling invisible, about a stormy evening that could have gone differently. She didn't mention amounts or details. She spoke about choice, about seeing someone. People listened. Afterward, a young woman approached her, eyes shining. I didn't think someone like me could be helped, the woman said. She smiled gently. I didn't think so either. On her way home, she walked slowly, letting the air cool her face. She thought about the old man again, about how he never wanted attention, yet his actions kept reaching further. Weeks later, a letter arrived from the foundation. They informed her that a small scholarship had been created, funded quietly. Meant to help others in service work continue their training, they asked if she would help review applications. She sat at her table. Reading the letter twice, she said yes now. She spent some evenings reading stories written by people who sounded like she once did. Tired, hopeful, afraid to ask, she took the responsibility seriously at the diner. One rainy night, the cook poured her a coffee and leaned on the counter. You've changed, he said. She thought for a moment. I think I've grown, he nodded. Same thing. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. Not a storm. Just rain. She watched it fall and felt grateful. She knew now that life wouldn't stay easy. There would be setbacks, losses, hard days. But she also knew something else. One moment of kindness could travel farther than anyone ever expected. And sometimes, the person who changes the most is the one who chooses to give it. She finished her coffee, stood, and stepped back into the night steady, aware and no longer afraid of storms.